Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
Did you log into the department account?
Perhaps.
Oh, that's my fault. I can't hear you. Hang on.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so you're hosting. You might want to hand off the hosting to either me or to Marta.
Mara's not logged in.
She's trying to get in.
Okay, you're the host now.
Thanks.
I reserve the right to make myself host anytime I want.
Okay.
Refreshing. Okay. Watch you about 15 minutes of sitting like this. I'll be wide awake. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't want to be wide awake at 1 o'clock.
If you drink more of this, you won't be. You gotta get put in.
You got a little caffeine. I've already had my lifetime. I like caffeine.
Sorry for the delay, commissioners. We're just
Because this morning.
trying to get it up on the screen
Where do you
here.
get your- I like those. Do you have to get those online or can you buy them?
When you buy them online, Costco.
Well, Costco has.
Yes. Yep.
There's
There's a Zoom link.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
What's that?
I thought I had some.
It should be on the web page. Did you not find it on the web? Okay, let's do.
I drank yours.
That was me.
Oh, is that
See if
you?
it's
Yeah.
the same.
Oh, I drank.
I was
link as
kind of hoping
before.
for a thank you card, but I
I
don't know
didn't
what
say
else to
anything.
do.
I didn't say anything.
Here it is.
I don't have time for it.
I noticed.
It's like being at a meeting with your wife.
762.
You know, doesn't matter what you do, you can
So
never
let
get ahead.
me-
He always best, he
Let's
always
do
best. feels.
Oh, here we go.
Even if it's just you.
Oh.
Do I need to put you back at the office again?
Yeah.
Would you separate the kids?
Well, I was here all alone. I think he'd be down there.
Yeah, I'm right over there walking on 24th Street. Back, blah, blah, blah.
Do I send it over to Link? Okay.
One with a stick.
Wayne, you got
You're
a
over
big
there.
stick. You're a
Wait,
big.
do it. Wait, you handle it.
All you gotta do is sit, look at that parking terrace and the length of it, how far
I'm
that
gonna go
goes.
call IT.
Oh, over here?
Yeah.
That's the right decision.
More than $10 million.
Thanks, Shelley.
Oh, or 20. I don't think you could build it for under 20 today.
I don't think you build under 30.
Yeah.
I don't think you can build it
right next. You can't, it's concrete.
That's true. Yeah, that's
Wait,
true.
price of
It's
concrete?
Well, just getting
We
it.
have a-
Yeah.
There's
You're
so many
right.
guys,
You
you
can't
can't-
even build the darn.
There's so many forms in the ground
Actually,
right now.
mute the
You
screen
can't
to even get going.
Yeah, you're right.
We have an agenda.
We don't have to push.
We have an agenda for today posted, right?
Yes, we do.
And the link is on there.
Okay. You're pushing like about 8 projects right there.
Really?
They're pushing that 84, John?
No, the one that, well, I was told them because they can't get
Oh.
anything, they can't get the mother.
Really?
I care about the 84.
You're
I was
talking
like
about
89.
I was
Yeah.
told the other day that all the mud going up into Heber Valley and all through there was all coming out of Evanston.
Because that one plant burned down, the line maker.
Yeah, well, I just tell you, they talk about the cement plants in Evanston, how they're banking it right now. Because they sell everything they can make.
Ah,
I do. You ready for it?
No, they're still
Let's see.
early design on that interchange at 84, 89.
Oh, that's right. I'm
885-9582-2823.
Or else it's leaving that one up there doing.
We're up and going.
You guys are going now?
Yeah. So try again. 885-9582-2823.
Hold on, let me write that
It's just the Zoom link, not my social security
down.
number.
You have to let her in because you're the host.
Oh, thanks. Look at that.
Okay. You guys need anything, let me know.
Thanks, Shelley.
Recording in progress.
Why don't you guys turn it right now?
Perfect.
Okay.
Start video.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
There you go.
All right.
Steve, Charlie, and who's the other one? Oh, us. There's a lot of us online today. I'm glad people.
Minimize that, Charlie, will you? The little minus sign. So we can see more of the screen,
Perfect.
a little more.
Oh.
Keep going
Closer.
over. Go,
So the-
no,
The little one on the far left-hand side.
upper left-hand corner, that little box.
That one.
Oh, you got it.
I need to know.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just, no, you're good. Just.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, guys. Mr. Chairman, you want me to just dive in?
Please.
Thanks for giving us time, commissioners, and to have this joint work session. I know not easy to get our schedules together all the time, and it's good when we can get them to align. I'm pretty grateful to the Planning Commission wanting to have a number of joint work sessions with you guys, because I think once we get through all this, you guys are going to be more primed and ready to take action pretty quickly on the plan. So here we go. Since last time we met together in a joint work session, I believe we completed the transportation section of the general plan. We have completed the Parks and Recreation section of the general plan, and we have completed the county resource management section of the general plan. We put a lot of effort into completing the utility section of the plan. The new Senate bill requiring us to address water is going to throw me for a curveball. So we're almost done with the utility section, but not quite. We did review with the Planning Commission last week about 50% of the utilities section of the plan. And so I wanted today to just try and bite off the rest of that, which I think would be very helpful to do with you guys, because you guys may have received had a lot more conversations with members of the public who feel like they are either underserved or, maybe sometimes you get notions of thanks for adequate service. But I know when we went to the Uinta Highlands, we had a board up in the Uinta Highlands regarding services and asking, are you satisfied with these services? We had a handful, quite a few who were satisfied with services. And the only thing that we really saw was secondary water pressure is too low, and we need broadband, better broadband in that area. And so it was kind of cool to see a number of people fairly grateful, not complaining, let's say that, not complaining about lack of snowplow drivers, whatever that. I'm sure you guys get more calls right after a snowstorm than you did when we were doing that meeting, but. And so if you guys are okay with that, we'll just kind of dive into the last half of the utilities section and then loop county commissioners, loop you guys back into the rest of the dialogue on transportation, parks and recreation, and county resource management. Comfortable with that? A lot of details. There's a lot of weeds to muddle through. And so if we could kind of stay higher level on some of those other sections, that would be great. I've got new copies. So all the stacks of papers that you have, go ahead and just toss them in the recycling bin on the way out, because I've got new copies coming up, still printing right now, but they'll be up here in, momentarily that we can all go through. Okay. Does that sound all right? Like a good plan, or any desire for adjustment? Okay, I get 2 thumbs up. Let's head on down to the utilities section. Okay, so the utilities section, like I mentioned, the first part, we talked a lot about water. And there's essentially water concurrency requirement from the state that needs to be put into our plan. And I'll address those requirements with everybody after we talk about the other utility services and public services for the area. I'd like to, I think water can take a long time, and there's a lot of ideas and a lot of passions behind it. So it could easily take our 2-hour conversation. So I'd rather avoid that, come to it back in a little bit later in the discussion. Okay, good. Okay. Regarding surface and stormwater. So I guess we're not totally avoiding water, but we'll talk about this one. We do have a stormwater master plan. It's completed a few years back. And I know at the time it was conducted with the idea being that maybe we need to create a stormwater utility and apply a stormwater utility fee. Commissioners, what are your thoughts about creating a stormwater utility and utility fee? It's probably something that could be combined in terms of billing, just with garbage.
So we did that last year and the year previous. We've always had a stormwater plan, and we've had a stormwater fee. We just weren't putting anything in there and doing anything.
So we had a
So-
fund for it, but we weren't
So 2 years ago, we took cash out of the county and put into it.
500 grand.
And then last year, we actually held a public hearing and raised fees. And at the end of this year, we'll put $1 million into there. So we will have $1.5 million at the end of the year to address stormwater plans. So we have the funding for today. And we have a master plan study for it. So
We don't have adequate funding, but we have a start. We have a
Yeah.
starting point.
yeah,
So we raised fees. The raising of those fees was specifically for stormwater.
Specifically.
So stormwater fee applied. That was last year?
It's at the end of 2021.
It's a tax.
It's a tax, not a fee.
yeah, it's tax.
Stormwater tax. So it's a separate.
Yeah, it's on
separate
your
assessment.
tax.
It's a separate line
Line
item.
item.
And 2020. So now, since we have a utility. Thank you. I missed a whole year in there. Must have been COVID.
We all did.
Since we have a utility set up, are you interested, if we're still not getting enough cash for this master plan, are you interested in applying a utility fee separate from the tax, above and beyond what the tax is? Just another revenue source.
Why'd you ask him the hard question?
Just gonna dive right in.
Weaver County is the only one in the county that doesn't charge a utility fee for stormwater. Every other entity does.
All the municipalities.
Well, when we raised the taxes, I had several mayors come to me and says, okay, we start charging stormwater, now you charge the stormwater in that duplicate, in that double taxation. And I told them, I says, well, you charge for the water that goes through your city. We charge the water that goes through unincorporated and from the end of your city out to the lake.
And
Which
they
we
all,
have.
and they all come through our.
So we didn't feel like it was double taxation.
And what
You
was the
figure
rate
what's a
on that? I mean,
12-inch
it's-
pipe up there is gonna be
Right.
48 or
Right. Exactly.
By
How much
volume.
is it?
Up to 6%.
Yeah, but it's what, 20 cents or 12 cents a month? What was it again?
It wasn't a lot, but we end up with about $1 million a year.
Yeah.
And that's $1 million more than we've ever had.
Is $1 million enough?
Probably not, but go back to the other question you had. And the question was, do you want to do something else? And
Yeah, I don't know,
this was a big step to get the $1 million.
we push back on the utilities simply because every other city, and we don't, again, our position has been, we want to be conservative on raising taxes. And even though it's a fee on utilities, it's still a tax.
Right.
And that discourages sometimes, or companies looking to come to this area going, that's an advantage we have, and it's also an advantage to those people living in unincorporated. They don't have to pay it, so it's an additional fee. Quite frankly, right now, I'd probably say, I'm not gonna jump at the chance to increase it.
Me neither.
Would you guys shudder if it's in the plan that at some point in the future you may consider the opportunity?
Well, I don't know if you have to put that in the plan. We have that ability under state code to do it anytime we vote for it.
Right?
I don't think it has to be in
I
the
don't think
plan.
it needs to be in the plan.
No,
Okay, good. The other thing we talked about with the planning commission a little bit about stormwater and surface water in our last meeting last week was the concern of the issue that a lot of this drainage is coming from incorporated areas upslope and flowing out into the unincorporated areas. So there's a general desire to work with other municipalities to consolidate stormwater planning. How do you guys feel about that? That doesn't necessarily mean that we need to consolidate entities or anything like that.
So
but just-
we do that today. We have a I forget the name of that, Sean. What is that group that gets together to handle stormwater?
Golden Spike.
Yeah, the Golden
Coalition.
Spike Coalition.
Yeah, that's right. Golden Spike Coalition.
But there's a difference in what the Golden Spike does and what we're
Yes.
talking about. Golden Spike, we meet, I meet with them, I represent UDOT on that
Right.
committee. But we meet to talk about stormwater regulations,
Right.
compliance, stuff like that. I think where this is going is more flow management, more of a drainage side of stormwater, not compliance side of
Yeah,
stormwater.
they're not project specific.
Understand they're
this
not.
would be.
Every municipality does their own, right? So do we need to get together to coordinate all that?
Yes,
You
I think so.
We do.
Well, you look at look at stuff out, when we get big water years, look at the 4,000 north, the western drain, everything that comes down. And if they don't coordinate in North Ogden and start holding water, and they just send it in Pleasant View, well, then Far West runs over, Plain City runs
Yeah.
over as it gets down
Sure.
there. So I think there needs to be a coordination between all entities, more on the flow side than just, we did it, I mean, what year was that,
I was
2017?
gonna say, was this under Lance Peterson?
It was Lance and
Early
Carey,
17.
huh?
Early 17.
Early 17, and when we had big water years, the county brought everybody together and we started
Yeah.
talking coordinated plans and stuff like that, and then it all just kind of went
Well,
away.
of course, when there's no issue.
Yeah, when it goes dry, there's not a problem.
But we've never coordinated flows because we've never measured flows. And so you're right. Now, we're actually getting ready to make our first move. The horseshoe pond that we have out north here, we're trying to actually buy that pond. We have the use of it and you can't take it away from us, but the dirt underneath it, we don't own. And so we're trying to take responsibility for that horseshoe pond west. And that's something we're working on right now, but you're right, beyond that point.
Mhm. I think that's a whole nother bigger issue. I think we'll get
I
into a
agree.
rabbit hole.
I know our engineering division addresses this from time to time. I just sat in a meeting with Gary and Ashley a week and a half ago. There's a body of water, a pond area where one gentleman has dammed part of it because there's a need to access water and there's water rights that the gentleman has. On the other side, the other person is a little bit concerned about water backing up and it causing damage to their property. And overall, the issue that we were concerned about, or at least that Gary and Ash were talking about, is we don't have a lot of control over what comes into that drainage from other places, only where that drainage is dispersed once it gets here. And so if it's not a matter of planning with those other jurisdictions, the flows that come from their area into our area, it's definitely gonna need to be at least a knowledge or calculation of what that is, so we can disperse it.
So 2 years ago, Gary brought in the plan, the Salt Lake County had put into effect. And we looked at all the tributaries and the stream flows and where they came together and joined and the choke points and what they had done. And I had to agree, we were all way impressed when we left.
They do a good job.
Yeah, they've done a good job, but they've, they were the ones that had City Creek running down the middle of the road too.
Yeah.
So they were recovering. And we understood that we're well behind. But like I say, it takes an effort to get 3 votes and agree on some of these things. And we've worked at it over a period of time and we're finally there. We feel like we've made $1 million leap from where we were, because we were nothing to $1 million. And so we are doing things here. And I think for the first time, you'll see some of that start to take place. Now,
The optics, because we were 0 to $1 million. The optics look horrible because on the tax notice, it shows 100% tax increase. Well, when you start with 0.
Yeah.
And you start, and then you'd add 12 cents a month, it's 100%, or 1 cent a month, it's 100%.
Right.
So, but at least it gets it going,
Is that a countywide increase or is that just unincorporated area?
countywide.
Countywide. So what did the Salt Lake County tell us that they were talking 20, 30 million
Yes,
to even start to reach where they were at.
but they formed a district, they have taxing authority. I mean,
Yeah, I
it's-
guess that's what my question is do you see a district that would have taxing authority, or do you see, if you're gonna run this like Salt Lake County, you've got to have a separate district that has taxing authority.
That was another part.
That's
of
a
the
step.
conversation
I think
that
it's
we
gonna
had.
come to that point that we really need to get
Down the
to.
line.
I don't doubt that. Is that what you're proposing now though, or more coordination?
No, I think it's just more coordination at this point,
Coordination.
but I think, it wouldn't hurt in the plan to say,
Oh,
in 5 years down the road, do we, reevaluate it? Because as more growth comes and more drain ditches get filled in with pipe and,
Yeah,
I mean, out west, it's
having
gonna
it
get
in,
harder.
having it in the plan kind of puts a line in the sand.
I think absolutely the
Yeah.
district concept needs to be put this could, because 5, 10 years down the road, as you have growth, more water is gonna need to be controlled, needs to happen. Yeah.
Especially as North Ogden and
Yeah.
Pleasant View,
Yeah.
we've seen max there. And it was right to the top of those pipes.
You get the same problem on the south end of the county through Birch Creek.
Birch Creek.
I mean, you got 2 big drains in these areas. Well, there's several, but that's your big one on the south. And when you hit the railroad tracks, guess what? You hit a plug.
Well, and we know we got a problem there. We've actually been in touch with the railroad. Says,
Yeah.
okay, what do you want to do?
That's that right.
Their tracks.
I think a key
You
to
got a
all
big
of
It's a
this-
road,
goose
it's a
egg out there.
railroad.
kind of a key to this coordination thing is kind of some preventative maintenance measures too. Because we never know where the choke points or the problems are until the water starts flowing.
True.
And no prevention's ever, really thought about. So I think that part of the coordination should entertain some maintenance. I mean, I remember, 30, 40 years ago, when all of the big drainages out west on at least every 2-year basis were drug. I remember the drag lines being down there all winter long.
And I think
they
Joe's
were-
getting there. Joe gave us a presentation at Weed Board yesterday that shows a lot of the drains that they've just worked on in the last little bit.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think it's
in fact,
coming a long
he told us for the first time since he's been here, we've actually dredged and done every drain to the lake and done with it for the first time.
And that's because we had the finance and the money to be able to do it.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big deal.
I think it's making leaps and bounds. I mean, we're headed in a good direction.
For the plan, you're right, Charlie, put it in and I agree. with
Doesn't hurt to
Kate.
have it in the
Doesn't
plan.
hurt. There's something probably, as time goes on, we should look at it.
Great, it is there. Gives me something to write about. Okay, electricity, so power and natural gas. A couple of things that we thought about there. I did get the chance to talk to the gentleman from Rock Mountain Power that came in and spoke with you guys a couple weeks ago. Kurt
Nigro?
Yep, that's right. And they're going through the process of looking at what information they can release and what information they can't release on what critical facilities they have. They can't release some of it because of security issues. But what I've asked them for is we want to identify utility corridors so that we know when a utility comes in, we could say, here's the corridor. new pipeline, new transmission line, new whatever, we could say, this is our designated corridor. Please locate within this area so we don't have crisscrossing of utilities throughout the county.
So listen, when I was in the legislature, I found out that's a big deal. You know, the power company comes in here and tells us we want to put a 150 kW here or 200 there. And you go back east and everything's 500 kW. They're master, great big ones. They say, oh, we can't do that here. We can't do here. And we said, well, why not? They said, well, because we don't want it. We said, yeah, so you'd rather have 4 wide of these running through. They said, yeah, actually, we would rather have that. And it's like, well, I said, why do you do it back there? And they said, because they mandate it. So,
Interesting.
yeah, so my point is, we have more power there than we think we have. And even though they fought it, when it come right down, a push come to shove, they had to agree. But we had some authority there. And so if we don't want to expand these corridors any bigger than we are, we can force them to consolidate 2 into 1. We can force them to do that. Now, they're not mad or happy about it. They'll fight us and, you know, take us to the Public Service Commission and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it'll be a battle.
But we do have more to say than we think. So I'm in favor of getting some corridors set aside for power.
And one of my thoughts, really easy picking, is just to follow the West Legacy or North Legacy corridor. It'd be a great area. People could, excuse me, as before the freeway comes in, those utility agencies can locate within those corridors and have whatever conduit they need to pull. It'd be great if we can get this set aside so it's underground from the beginning if we've got the corridors coming in. So that'll be one corridor that I'm identifying. We've already got the high transmission corridor that runs close to 2,700. Well, it's between 2,700 and 3,500. So we'll identify. I've already identified that. I've already identified that on the map crossing the entire county as that utility corridor.
And you can force them to expand that if you want to put higher service.
Thank you. So, put higher service within that.
Right.
Now, if we're looking at other utility entities that they know they need to have a certain distance from, for example, a power corridor, but we want them to be within a general location of the same corridor. Are you guys comfortable with, let's just say we're within that main transmission corridor that Rocky Mountain Power has? And then the water line, that the big 6-foot diameter, or sorry, 12-foot diameter water pipe coming from the Bear River drainage down to a treatment facility. They want to locate that, but Rocky Mountain Power doesn't want it to go right inside of their right of way. So they got to be maybe adjacent to it. And they want, and the state is estimating 100-foot wide utility easement for that. Are you comfortable putting that on a map and showing it without future development opportunities in it, unless there's coordination with the county and with the state? Kind of like we do with street highway corridor preservation.
How much of that area between 2,700 and 35 is in the county still?
There's not a ton, but there is a little.
As I understand, we can't force them to do that. We can't force them to sell or put it in there.
Right.
But if you will call Central Weaver, they have a major portion of that purchased already.
Going south.
For Central Weaver, and then Salt Lake County has, or their water district has a major portion of theirs purchased too.
Yeah.
So
So I'm thinking
I would
about,
think we'd want to put that on the map.
and I'll just kind of do a general alignment. We're not going to identify parcels or anything like that, because there's a lot of opportunities in the future for negotiation when it comes to that.
So what are you gonna put in, Charlie?
It's going to be a utility corridor that follows the power line corridor,
Okay,
where we will strongly encourage, if not create ordinances in the future, that other utilities that want to cross the county north to south need to be located
no,
in
so you're talking the north and south.
north south. Yep.
Okay,
But on the east side of the existing corridor, on the west side, probably the west, I would assume.
We'd probably want to leave that open, just opportunities for the
no,
future.
that makes good sense. Let's establish those corridors, even though they're not easements at this point in time.
Now,
It saves
east-west,
some battles down the road.
East-west, I'm thinking the railroad provides a really good
Yeah.
alignment to that corridor. If we do
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Good. So we'll take a couple of notes. All right. Natural gas, any comments, concerns, desires, aspirations for natural gas services in the unincorporated areas?
Well, yeah, we want services there, but I'm not sure I want to go out. They traditionally use the road, and so I think we ought to let them continue to use that. And that's the right of way, utility right of ways that are associated with the road.
Great. Work with. Do we have a franchise agreement? Do we have a franchise agreement with the gas company?
Is there a corridor for gas out to Little Mountain to the industrial area out there now?
It's in the road,
It's in the road. Oh, it's in the road.
and it's a major, they replaced it here a few years ago, and it's a major, they sized it up, and it's under high pressure too.
It's
I think a 5-pound line.
It's a high pressure, I think it's 12 high pressure, 14-inch high pressure.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
It was a big one.
Sorry, electricity, I just remembered something. Undergrounding utilities, high transmission is one thing it's gonna be a hard sell to underground any of that, but service lines, our current code says if you're gonna do a new subdivision, you need to underground those utilities. I would recommend, if we're ever gonna get existing overhead utilities undergrounded, I think we should be looking at not just undergrounding new extensions. I think we should be looking at undergrounding existing overhead utilities. Is there any desire for that to be?
I think anytime we go through and widen these roads and do that stuff, we're crazy that we're moving power poles instead of just putting them onto it.
Okay.
No, the power company hates that. They fight that.
They don't
I
like it,
agree with
but-
Brandon.
Makes sense.
I think you need to demand.
It's about 3 times as expensive to underground, the power company
Yeah.
estimates, but they're more than happy if the county makes them do it. They just need to have the county be the ones to be the bad guy they can blame on when they raise rates.
Yeah.
At least that's what they tell
So put it in there.
Okay.
We'll see if you get the 3 votes on it.
me.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Makes sense.
Okay. We're gonna have to go through the plan with a matrix and get votes yes or no on each principle.
I think it's an all or nothing.
We've done that before.
Yeah, we've done that before.
Split it up.
Okay, public safety. We just have a paragraph about the sheriff's complex, providing provision for services, public safety. Any desire for expansion of the conversation on public services? That's both sheriff and EMS. Fire and,
You say services, what, you're not talking construction, you're talking.
no, just policing and fire response and ambulance response.
I don't know. Does that need to be in the plan?
Nope, doesn't have to be. In fact, what we've said so far is, keep the existing level of service as it is. It's working operatively.
Yeah.
Do we agree with that statement?
We do.
And it's
Yeah,
going
I'm
to
yeah, I'm
expand.
good with that. I hate to say we're gonna provide a certain level of services for an independent office.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes it's worthwhile to just make a statement in your plans that we like what's happening and we want to keep what
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
Okay, just so everybody knows, if you want to follow along, I am on page 83.
Sure are.
Scott's fired.
That's right. Actually, it might have been Scott who brought this to us. Oh, yeah, look at that. Everyone
They're all that
upside
way.
down. That wasn't Scott's fault. That
Oh.
was my fault. I was the one who.
I'm not gonna say Charlie's fired.
No, gotta give me a month or two and then you can say
Once it's done,
it.
thanks for all your hard work. So yeah.
All right, you went to Highlands. We know that we heard from the public. It wasn't a huge turnout, but we did hear that broadband needs to be expanded or quickened. I don't know what's the word. Increased,
They want fiber.
install fiber. Install fiber and increase secondary. We don't have control over that, but we always have good conversations with those entities. Increase secondary water. And then I know that we had, actually storm drain is already addressed above.
Is fiber the best? Is that why they're wanting fiber? Is that the reason?
Yeah, but if, I mean, maybe fiber is too specific.
I was gonna say, maybe we just keep it more general and just say improve
Good point.
rather than saying commit to one of them.
And I kind of think the same thing on the secondary water. Maybe a little more gentle, because that's getting their higher pressure may be a multitude of things to happen to get it.
Increase secondary
Yeah.
water access. Secondary water service.
Yeah.
Okay. Annexation. So in the plan, we're making a statement. That statement is that we are going to encourage unincorporated islands and peninsulas, as well as the Uinta Highlands area, to annex into an adjacent city for more equitable access to and payment of or payment for municipal services. Any concerns about making that statement? I don't know if we're ever going to find an impetus to get the Uinta Highlands to annex into an adjacent city, but if that's a desire, then maybe one day that opportunity will present itself. And
We've supported that, you know, adjoining municipalities want to annex, or there's a group that feels they're better off in the city. We haven't stood in the way, so let them do it.
Right,
Great.
Right, Scott?
right. That's absolutely right.
Okay, a little statement about incorporation as well. Residents of all or portions of Western Weaver County planning area may decide to incorporate at some point in the future. County decisions should consider possible impacts on the effects of, future town governance and budget. Any concerns about that statement?
That's what they should look at.
Okay. Did I miss anything when it comes to utilities, other than talking about water and wastewater? Okay. Let's go back and talk about wastewater. That's on page 82. Yep. Okay, I'm just going to go through these 3 paragraphs. You guys tell me to stop if you've got a concern or a question. Sewer service for limited portion of the unincorporated area is provided by the West Central Weaver Sewer Improvement District and Little Mountain Service Area. Residents outside of existing sewer service areas rely on individual septic drain field systems. Utah state law requires that community sewer service must be provided by a body politic, either a service district created by the county commission or the county commission itself. The commission may create a special district and delegate sewage control to the board of that district while maintaining some control when it comes to the boundaries of the district. For community sewer systems that are not governed by a district, the county remains the body politic. Although the county commission either governs the body politic or supervises the delegated sewer district, there is currently no countywide sewer district or coordinated sewer system infrastructure planning. Residents are concerned that continued development with septic drain field systems could degrade water quality in the future. The 2003 West Central Weaver County General Plan recreation element recommends that the county encourage farmers to sell development density to developers interested in developing at higher density near developing sewer infrastructure. So we've got an issue with that.
What page you on, Charlie?
82.
82.
Yep, in wastewater.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to the statement.
Why should you be making a recommendation like that out of a recreation plan?
I deleted that whole sentence.
Okay, that made no sense to me.
Not there. I think that might have
Okay.
been some carryover from a previous plan.
You took that out, right?
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay,
The other thing that I think might be a little misleading is the statement, there's currently no countywide sewer district or coordinated sewer system infrastructure planning. Now that's countywide. But we've got individual systems in individual cities. We've got districts serving other cities. And we're working on something for the unincorporated area right now. We've got a good plan that's out there. We've got to know where the pump stations are going to be and or the lift stations. So I want to amend that a little bit. But what are your guys' thoughts as far as the plan for wastewater for the future? What would you like to see in the plan itself?
For wastewater, I'd like to see it treated and be able to be reused again.
Okay, great. Master, so and continue master planning.
In fact, I'll be so bold as to say I'd like to see all the water that we get treated and used for residential, and then all the wastewater be used for agriculture and everything else. Secondary, I mean, I'd like to use the water twice. It's a way to double your water supply.
Yeah, sure is.
until you clean it up to a certain standard, state law prevents you from doing that.
Yeah, but we've just learned recently in the last month with the package plants and things that one developer sat in here and told us that they could clean it up 5 times better, from like 10 microns down to 2 microns. The state accepts up to 10 milligrams or
For
flux
you to discharge.
capacitors or whatever. Oh, that's for discharge.
Right.
They have, Santa Quin City, they have a waste, their facilities, a reuse facility, and they push it back out into secondary water. There's treatment facilities that can do it, like the state will.
But they're more than 10.
I can't remember what the parameters are.
Well, this
but
one
they
he was
do.
saying was 2.
Well, it might be because of the valley being the non-discharge area, so they might have to treat it to a certain
Higher
level in
standard.
order to do it there versus down here.
All I know is Central Weaver is looking at that. And the main thing that stopped that from happening is the fact that they have to clean that to such a higher standard to discharge it back into the canal going to Willard Bay. There was about a $20 million
Oh, wow.
facility. It was not cheap to do.
So is it state
Set a goal.
regulations that's stopping us from doing this, or is it just that
State
threshold
and
of
federal.
cleanliness? Okay.
I think as water becomes more a needed resource, I don't necessarily think it's the regulations, it's the cost right now, is what it is.
Okay, so we're saying instead of
I
that.
mean,
that's what I'm
It's allowable. You just got to get it to that point.
Yeah.
Somebody
get
will
that
clean
point.
it. They will have the money.
And newer technology getting
Yes.
better all the time too, so. But Charlie, I had one concern up in the paragraph above where it says residents are concerned. But again, going back to state mandate or state regulation, isn't there something, along that line that is eventually going to have to be dealt with as well?
Yes, now that's, that gets to a little bit of a mushy spot. Who's gonna pull the ripcord to stop development on drain field systems? Is it gonna be the county commission that says, sorry, guys, you can't develop unless you install a sewer system? Or is it gonna be the health department, or is it gonna be the state? I mean, it's a little bit of a hot button issue.
Well, so the answer to that, the health department has control over that under state code.
Yeah, and I would agree with
To
you.
answer your question, if it gets stopped by the health department.
But generally, it'll be the state of Utah that comes in and tells them to do it.
But they
Yeah,
need to
well,
stop.
they have certain,
DEQ.
yeah, I mean, they have to meet the
Division
DEQ
water quality.
standards. Yeah,
Well, there's-
absolutely.
Yeah, once they start seeing it in
But
water.
if
Right.
if they get complaints, they go out and monitor it. See what,
Let's work with. Health department. Encourage. Health department.
The reason everything's working the way it is right now is because we've had 5 dry years.
That's right. That's, I remember some of those wet years out there, and a lot of the septic tanks, guess what?
Yeah.
Came to the top.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why West Haven has a sewer system.
I was there when they hooked it up. I was actually glad to hook to the sewer.
To do unincorporated wide service districts, I know there's been different conversations about maybe merging the two districts that are currently out in the area, building towards each other. What's the long-term ideal for sewer service broadly? That makes sense.
I think you just need to make a statement in there that it's the goal of the county to have mechanical services provided to everybody who would like it. Period. And then let it develop the way it's gonna
Yeah.
develop.
The state's gonna push for consolidation,
Right.
you know, water quality's pushing that right now.
It's great. All, I see development properties. Okay. Good. More statements, West Central. Is Little Mountain, would they consider, West Central considers themselves a wholesale provider, right? And then all of our lines were service.
Central Weaver.
Central Weaver.
Sorry, Central Weaver. Does Little Mountain take the same stance?
No,
Okay, so Central Weaver owns all the lines, delivery mechanisms or.
They own trunk
receiving
lines.
right?
So you got, it's similar to the water. I mean, they have a main trunk line that runs to the south end of the county. They've got one going to the north end of the county, but they don't really go out any feeder, you know, anywhere away from that.
Okay, but if they went away from that, would that be their infrastructure or would that be county infrastructure?
It's, I don't think you would see them take that on personally. They have their trunk lines and they're gonna maintain your trunk lines. The county has, you know, service lines or feeder lines that they're gonna maintain just like all the municipalities do.
so LMSA is, they are a district that provides services. And they only have 4 customers, but they're getting ready to get a few more.
Mhm.
So, but.
But do they own the trunk, the trunk lines, or are they just the treatment facility?
No, they own the trunk lines. So they're really different. The LMSA is like Plain City.
No, Plain City, I would think Plain City's one entity that maintains it all.
Mhm.
They collect it and treatment. So you got your collection system and your treatment
That's
system.
what LMSA is.
And so, but I think as it grows, though, I think they'll grow more like Central Weaver.
I think they desire to be,
They want to maintain all their lines too.
and they want to go into Central Weaver someday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay,
LMSA is an odd.
so Central Weaver provides wholesale service.
Yeah, and it would be the counties, I would dare say, our hope that Central Weaver would continue to expand in that area until they get everything. That would be our goal, if you're stating goals.
Okay.
Basically,
To
plant 1 and plant 2, build.
great. No,
Yeah, we
that's-
don't
straight out
care
west.
Well, we care less. though.
Let it all be one entity though.
Right,
Yeah, at the end of the day, it should be one entity.
that's the goal.
Encourage,
Who knows?
Yeah.
encourage consolidation.
I agree.
Sure.
Good. That's what I wanted to hear. Okay, as far as Central Weaver goes, they've got a main, right, a trunk line that they have responsibility for. The rest of the lines out there are the county.
They have several trunk lines, but they maintain the trunk lines and then all everything else gets sent to them.
And
The
Just-
county has none out there. We don't own a trunk line. We don't have a responsibility out west, nothing. We have a couple of small little districts around the,
Well,
That's not true, right?
we function as a sewer provider in Western Weaver County.
yeah, but we don't own a
We-
pipe.
We do. Yeah,
Do we?
we do.
is it
I see.
by lack of stewardship over the pipes that we just defaults to us?
Essentially, so our pipes hook into Central Weaver's pipes. They provide the treatment, but we are over the distribution. and
We're
transmission.
over,
Yeah.
but we don't own a trunk
No,
line.
we do. And if they fail, we have to replace them. We
It's our
own them.
responsibility.
Where are those at?
In that area where
All
those
through
lift
Taylor,
stations
West
go.
Weaver.
Huh?
Yeah, all through there.
I'm assuming every planned lift station is gonna be county owned.
Correct.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So
Which
all those.
it's
lines
different
that
in
come
Uinta
on
Highlands.
5100.
Yeah.
Because
The one that was put in
Special
20 years
Services
ago, all
District,
that's-
they
all that's
change
in
all the
county,
sewer up
county,
there.
county.
That goes down.
Now, is
But
that
out
an
west,
agreement
the
we
county
have
does-
with
it's
Central
their
Weaver, or is that just by lack of Central Weaver
Yes.
taking them on?
Correct.
Interesting.
At some
The only
point
way
in the
is
past,
away
before I
around that
arrived
is
here,
another
the
district. that
county
we
was in
created
the
to
sewer
maintain.
business, and we've
Well,
just
we talked to
continued to
West Haven
provide
about
that.
taking us over.
Do,
Which
do,
their special services district could
Yeah.
just expand through there.
does
Because
the,
West Haven City doesn't
They
own
won't
the
do that.
sewer, just the district.
No, we want the district.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we want the district.
so I guess the question is, do we want Central Weaver, sorry, do we want to stay in the sewer business? Or do we want to encourage Central Weaver or some other entity to take on all of that infrastructure?
I think you
I
create a
don't think you
district.
have a
that-
choice.
Right now you
Right,
don't.
Because what happens is upon annexation or incorporation, that municipality is gonna take responsibility for those lines.
Correct.
Right?
That's
So
right.
why would Weaver County be jumping out of that part of that business? I don't see that anybody would want it. I don't think that Central Weaver or Little Mountain would want it. Now, you guys correct me if I'm wrong.
Central Weaver doesn't want it.
Yeah.
I can
But-
speak that.
If a district was created, like West Haven
Right.
City, they don't maintain the sewer.
Right.
They have a special services district that maintains their sewer.
Exactly.
And the same thing could take, I mean, Uinta Highlands is set up the same way.
Yep, that's the
It's like
discussion.
Taylor West Weaver would now do water and sewer if that
Right,
took on that area out there
right.
to maintain. And my thought for the county would be to push that. The county doesn't have the crews, to go maintain lift stations or the equipment and stuff like that, where like like Scott was saying, if West Haven Special Services District would expand and take on the sewer infrastructure, in that special services district, it would be in everybody's best interest because they have the equipment, they have the manpower, they have the
Right.
experience to maintain it.
But
But
until
we've
that,
encouraged them to do that, Andy.
yeah, but until there is a district,
Yeah.
it's got to land somewhere.
Yes, and
That's
it's
So
why
it's
we do
gonna
it.
land with
Right.
Weaver County
That's right.
for now.
That's true.
as more of these lift stations get on, I mean, that's just almost a whole nother department that the county's gonna have to create that I don't feel needs to be created. Someone else should do it. Or not someone else should do it, but let someone that, specializes in it. If we can consolidate resources, it saves everybody money.
Yes.
We wouldn't argue there, Brent. We agree with that.
Okay, so I've got Central Weaver provides
You wanna
wholesale
make a good
service,
commission.
which is reclamation. County responsible for collection and transmission to Central Weaver's collection trunk lines. Continue master planning wastewater system. It's a goal of the county to provide mechanical services to all developing properties. Work towards a system that allows reuse of reclaimed water. Encourage consolidation of service areas into a single district. Encourage health department to continue monitoring septic densities to determine max capacity. Okay, any other wastewater concerns? Okay. All right,
That's almost as bad as water.
let's talk about irrigation water, and I didn't. I didn't hear what that was.
It's flooded. Probably a comment.
I can't see what they're out
Where are we going to next? Wastewater.
there. From wastewater, let's go up one paragraph into irrigation water. And for whatever reason, what I have on the screen is different than what I have in front of you guys.
Hey, bud.
Maybe, see how long it goes.
Okay. So on the paper, not on the screen, what we have here, this was a discussion that we had in our meeting last week regarding irrigation water. Okay, there are a number of private irrigation companies that serve the West Central area. Sorry, and just make sure everyone's clear, West Central is the term we're using for the unincorporated area west of I-15 essentially. Distinctly different than Uinta Highlands. These systems are comprised of gravity-fed canals and ditches. A gravity-fed system requires a certain volume of water directed into it, called headwater, in order to maintain its ability to push adequate water flows to the furthest extent of the system. Because of this, irrigation companies have a limited supply of water rights or shares that can be transferred to other systems or converted to other water uses. As development occurs, and demand increases for secondary pressurized water, it would be beneficial to be able to transfer irrigation water into a pressurized system. If irrigation systems are also pressurized in order for irrigation water to continue to provide necessary delivery flows, then there may be more motivation to allow the transfer or conversion of water rights to other systems. For this reason, Weaver County should find ways to motivate and encourage the pressurization of irrigation systems.
For
Concerns with that?
residential use. Yeah, you want farmers to continue to have their canals and their ditches. If they want to pipe them and do their thing, we don't care.
Let's talk a little bit about that. So one of the things that we're working towards, that the state requires us to work towards, is water conservation. One way the water is wasted, so basically they're saying, look at water waste that's happening and figure out ways to minimize that water waste. And one way that it's wasted in a ditch system is you got about 50% of water that is either evaporated or percolated, if it's not a lined system. If it were, both of those problems go away. And then you get maybe seepage if you've got some seals that aren't working very well. So one thing that I have in the paragraph above is to require developers to work with those ditch companies to bury those ditches without impacting delivery flows. So they've got to have a minimal amount of elbows in those ditches, or in those tubes, to make sure the delivery flows get there.
So when a subdivision comes in, the secondary water that's in the ditch through the process gets converted over to secondary use.
Unless there's not enough water assigned to the ditch for it to leave the ditch. If there's not enough pressure to get the water all the way down the ditch system, that ditch company doesn't have any motivation to allow it to transfer.
I agree with that.
Okay.
But what ends up happening is that is a exchange that takes place outside the county and the county purview.
Yep.
What we do is we make sure that the subdivision has enough water to provide for its needs.
For irrigation.
So do you want to do more than
Well,
that?
I think where
That's-
Charlie's talking more a little bit
That's
is,
what
so
you guys-
say you have a trunk line canal. Say the main Plain City Canal runs through there, and
Oh,
now you have a subdivision that's being built around it. There, what we're pushing for is encouraging the developer to work with, like Plain City Irrigation,
yeah.
to take it from a canal and put it in a pipe.
in the pipe.
So that, you know, you don't have the evaporation, you don't have, run into the risks of, you know, look over there through Mia Meadows in Far West, you've got that huge canal that's 8 feet up and you got houses below it. Well, what happens when that canal decides to
Yeah.
break? It's gonna happen some point. You know, you got
So
flood. and
they
everything else.
cement line the ditch, right?
Yep.
And so they do that. Do you want them?
But a lot of,
to require that, because that's a pretty big deal.
the canal, like Wilson Irrigation tries to push, if you build on both sides of their canal, they wanna see it completely covered on there. And, but given cost now, it doesn't really,
That's huge.
you know, it doesn't work out. But I think we push for that for multiple reasons. You got safety, water conservation. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I think it should happen.
So I'm kind of looking at it from the
Well, that
financial
adds a
perspective.
substantial price to the price of a lot.
Which it's gotta be a two-way, I mean,
It
you
is.
can't put it all on the developer, but the irrigation company should partner, you know, at some point. Work for, like Charlie's got in there, the coordination between the two to encourage
Well, I'm
it,
okay with that.
you know,
Let's work
not
for
saying it has to be, but the coordination and the.
Motivate and encourage are the words that we use.
Okay.
So to the extent we have any ability. Okay, good. That is helpful. Okay. It's irrigation water. Anything else about irrigation water that you guys want to make a statement about for having the plan?
No, because
I've
secondary water.
lost that battle once. But, you know, for me, just as a water user, where we now have an open ditch through a subdivision, commissioner's been out there, is the thing that keeps me up at night is the liability. Because the thing of it is, we've got a ditch that runs fairly swift through there. We have a supposedly a non-climbable fence, which any 3-year-old could go over. And so I guess the thing that I really, I would like to see something more stronger than, I would say inside a subdivision, these ditches should be covered.
Shall be piped.
That's to me, because all the money that saved one lawsuit on our ditch will all be out of business.
True.
And so to me, I think they need to be piped.
And to his point, I mean, those are the smaller ditches. Those are the
Correct.
branch ditches that
Correct.
doesn't have the big umbrella from an irrigation company for that liability side. It's just you and 6 other farmers that
Right.
pull off of it, and it's on you guys' head instead of the ditch company at that
Yeah.
point. To where,
It changes that point of liability.
yeah, your branch ditches, I mean, and we could put something in there that states, all branch ditches through there should be piped. And we've kind of encouraged that, I think, with a lot of developments we've seen.
Well, right now in our code, we say if it's over a certain amount of cubic feet, it has to be piped and buried. We already have that in our code. So the question is, do you just want to see that across the board for all ditch systems, as long as the ditch company is comfortable with the idea? I mean, I don't know that we.
But we can still put that in the code. We can put stronger language in the code as we write it.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't necessarily have a problem with this being in the plan. I kind of like this being in the plan because it's not mandating anything.
Okay.
But I do think that my opinion is the proper place for that to be more strongly regarded is in the code.
And I
I
agree.
agree with that.
If you pipe some, you've got to pipe all. If a kid fell in and then went to the pipe, how do you ever get to them? I mean, you've got a liability there would be even worse.
We'd have to make sure we install those
Trash catchers.
and then we gotta
Yeah.
make sure that we've got
Trash
someone out there to
catcher,
go
great
catch
job
the
off
trash.
the bottom.
So it's not flowing
Yeah, you
over.
can't really force the adjoining property to cover their
Right.
ditch, but through a subdivision or through some sort of development, even if it's commercial, they should be, I feel like they should be covered, but I think that it can be covered in the code. It doesn't necessarily have to be covered in the plan, my opinion.
I think it's good the way it's worded because it's strongly recommended or it's, the recommendations there, but I agree the code word.
Vehemently recommended. Just kidding. Okay, let's go to water now. Secondary water. A lot of discussion about secondary water over the last few years. And we've done something. We've created a code that I think is right in line with where the state wants us to go in terms of water conservation. At the end of the day, by the year 2030, a lot of this is not going to be a problem. A lot of our desire for conservation is not going to be a problem because the utility company, the water companies can just hit us where it hurts the most, our pocketbook. So they'll be metering every connection outside of irrigation water. They'll be meeting every connection. Until then, we've got to find ways to help reduce the flow of water, so to speak. The state has a goal.
So why do we have to do that when the water company is the one that's responsible for it?
I agree. So this is the problem. This is the challenge. What the state has told us is Weber County and all the cities, you need to create a water plan that shows that you are planning for water at the same time as planning for growth. So those two things go in tandem with each other. Now the state knows that Weber County doesn't have control over any of the water.
Right.
Now, Ogden City has control over the water, right? And so their plans are going to be in sync or should be more in sync than what we have. State knows that all we have is influence. We have
So can we
connections.
put in there, the county strongly
Yes.
encourages?
Yes, absolutely. And strong and bold and big fonts.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But the other thing that we can do is through development review, just make sure that the secondary water company has its needs met. And that's going to be really important because the culinary water company needs that secondary system function. So all the conversations that we've already had, right? I don't know if I have anything else or anything more to say when it comes to use of secondary water, other than we should have some kind of a system or program where we are encouraging xeriscaping or water-wise landscaping. I don't know that I'm comfortable just with an outright ban on turf grass, which I think the state would love to see something like that in terms of water conservation. But maybe it's Weaver Basin is calculating on one share, 1 acre foot, being 0.55 being for outdoor use, which is about 8,000 square feet of turf grass. If somebody were to go down to 1,000 square feet of turf grass or 2,000 square feet of turf grass, maybe there's a credit system, or maybe there's a program or an award system where people are encouraged to do that.
Well, there's one way to do it, allow the setback from the road to be less,
So I have that in
allow the lot to be less. I mean, that's how you end up doing it, right?
I have that in here, actually. So have smaller lot sizes, have smaller setbacks. That's a great way to do it. In fact, that should be in secondary water, not in culinary. Okay,
I've got to speak up here. So, not that I'm learning as we go here. But if you allow the lot size to be too much less, I'm thinking about where my boy lives in Saratoga Springs. And he's got a 5-foot driveway, and he's got maybe 15, 20 feet from his back door to the back fence. 5-foot sides, that house fills that whole lot. I mean, and of course, they're happy with that. It's a single family dwelling. And I can see that there's some of those, but not everybody wants to live in a house like that.
so the
And so-
question I have for you is, do we reduce the setback and minimum lot size requirements, which will allow them to do something that small, allow a developer to do something that small, but the developer still has the option to not do it that small. They have the option to go bigger. So if there's a market for bigger, they're gonna go bigger, like what John Lewis is doing up on the mountainside.
I would rather see you reduce side setbacks and front setbacks, because you start reducing that, you can't fit no vehicles in there, then you got more on-street parking, and it just creates a mess. in
You
that
don't
way.
want to see, sorry, restate what you said.
Reduce side yard setbacks more so than your street frontage setbacks, so you don't run into just like, a 5-foot driveway, who can park a car in that,
Yeah, you can't.
Oh, it's
then
in the
all
garage
on-street.
or it's at the community parking at the HOA.
Yeah.
That's all there's to it. If you're not in the garage, you're a visitor.
Yeah.
You're walking in from the community parking.
Right.
That's how it goes.
So do we want to see 2 garage parking spaces and 2 driveway parking spaces for every residential lot? That's 4 spaces. That's quite a
I
bit.
think
That's
you
more
need
than
a
we
minimum
currently
of
have.
3.
What's that?
I think you need a minimum of 3, so.
Minimum of 3, 4. Okay, and we're getting there where we might need.
So you look at what your ERUs are based on, that's not even gonna be enough in the future, but at least you can state it back to a fact of an ERU is based on normally 3 people to a dwelling.
Hold on. Okay, now all of a sudden, let's say, you've got a guy here from Northrop Grumman. And he doesn't even own a boat. He doesn't own a canoe, a paddleboard. He has a car
Mhm.
and he drives to work. We're gonna give him that. He doesn't take the bus. And now we gotta give him 4 parking stalls. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I think I personally, I don't know about that. I think there needs to be a variety of different things. If the guy from Northrop wants a single car garage and it may be a single space out front. Some people want 2-car garage, some people want 3 or 5, like you, Brad, you've got 7 at your house or 23. whatever.
Yeah, there's plenty.
Well, traditionally.
Not enough.
You
Garage walls.
address that through the side sets.
Exactly.
So you're talking about 5-foot side sets, but like in Plain City, it's a 10 and
14.
12.
Mhm.
And others are similar to that, so that you can drive into your backyard on at least one side of your house.
Yeah,
I think it goes into your zoning and your types is where you put that at. I mean, the type of, if where I'm picturing you're, kind of where you're going, it's more of like a row type house, townhome type.
I'm talking about just being
Just a
able to
lot.
have an option.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So, we're learning a little bit that the developer wants to have so many of this type and so many of this type and so many of this type and so many patio homes. So he doesn't just sell, if he only has one type of home, then he can only sell 5 of those a month. But if he has 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of different things, he can sell 5, 5, 5, 5, and now he's selling 20 houses.
Diversified portfolio. I mean,
Diversified, but I don't want to lock it down where, but if you have certain types, I'm okay with that in certain types, but I want to be able to. And
That's where I think that master plan development agreement comes into play, and that's where you spell all that out, just
Yeah, I
like,
agree with
you know, similar to what JDC Ranch could be.
I
Spell it all out in there on
That's
this
right.
area, this is what you get, and this area, what you get, and you get a great community.
Okay.
built from that.
Secondary.
Okay, I see what you're, but you should get what I'm saying.
Oh, I totally agree. I don't wanna lock it down either, but in certain areas, I think. you
Nothing
do
about
need
that.
to-
Like those places out in South Dog, they got one garage or one place or so, then everybody else comes to visit, it's the same.
There's nowhere to park.
Keep it going. And about 6 o'clock, we're gonna be walking out of here, and I don't wanna
So,
be.
so
Too
one of the
far
questions,
short.
do you want to restate the
Sure.
question?
So I'm all for adding more development, more liberties there. But if we're trying to, if our purpose was just to get rid of turf to conserve water, if we put more housing on that and have more people in there, isn't that gonna suck more water than that? turf did?
That's where I was headed when I first started down the diatribe. Yeah, isn't that gonna start? Right.
It does, but the traditional thought is people are
400
coming
gallons a
anyway,
day.
so by putting more on there, you're actually saving. in
So then we
other
really
areas.
need to be able to recycle that water so that we can reuse it rather than.
I think you
recycle that
use
water.
less indoor water than what you would use outdoor water. We ran some numbers with Charlie just in our area. And the average residential home, and this is probably inflated some because right now we use May's numbers and these are true numbers. People are watering outside with Taylor West River water, but it was, what did we figure, 256 gallons per residential connection
ERU.
is what Taylor West
Inside.
Weaver is right now. That's even some using outside, so it's really inflated
That's 206 gallons a day.
per day.
And that's the
Per
number that I got
Person
No,
No,
that's
no.
per connection.
per residence.
per resident,
Yes.
yeah, well, traditionally, most of them figure about 400, so, yeah, I agree.
That's the number I got from Central Weaver in terms of what they assume they will collect on a per residential basis. It's
Right.
250. And so I think that's a pretty strong number to go with. And yeah, to just to reemphasize that point, same amount of people are going to be here. The question is are they going to be spread out with irrigation and secondary water needs? Or are they going to be more consolidated in some locations, which tends to have less of a water footprint?
Well, on the water share, more of it is actually dedicated for irrigation. A higher percentage of that share is dedicated for irrigation than it is for indoor use. Isn't it 0.45, 0.55?
0.45 inside, 0.55 outside, acre
So-
feet.
Right.
Again, that's assuming 8,000 square feet of turf grass. If you don't have all of that, your minimum still is 1 full acre foot if you're getting it from Weaver Basin. So they haven't adjusted that, but they stick to the 1 acre foot because that's just kind of a general rule of thumb. Most of the residential units have at least on average 8,000 square feet of turf grass. If you have more than 8,000 square feet of turf grass and you only have 1 acre foot of water, you're not paying enough. And Weaver Basin would love to have a conversation with you.
But I think for the plan, it needs to be held kind of general, like the irrigation water is. And then I think that more detail needs to be put in the code. And it's a zoning based thing too. I mean, when we start talking about the size of these lots, that goes directly to the zoning code. So I think that for the plan, we need to stay at a little bit higher level and encourage, all kinds of savings, water savings that we can.
Well, I would rather see incentivizing, more xeriscaping and stuff like that, rather than street trees. Right now our cluster code gives them bonus density for street trees.
Scott, there, oh, never mind.
You get 10% if you put trees in the park strip, which is the worst thing in the world.
Our cluster code doesn't give you 10%. You're either gonna get your bonus or you're not, and if you get the bonus, you have to have trees. I think is what it is.
Okay, anyways, however it works,
Pretty
but
close.
why do we want
Okay.
trees in the park strip? Why aren't we encouraging? Because you go back to the road department and everything else, that's just more of a headache for maintenance long-term. I'd rather see us incentivizing xeriscaping and
Well, if
stuff
you're-
like that.
If you're a Weaver Basin customer, you are incentivized right now to get rid of that strip. If you're not.
pennies
then
on the
it's
dollar
on your
though,
own.
but still,
Exactly.
So flipping the strip doesn't necessarily include removal of trees.
no.
And trees provide a really important public service. That is reduction of the urban heat island effect. Grass will help with evapotranspiration. Grass provides a huge benefit to the reduction of urban heat island. We get rid of all the grass, we're really going to be affecting how warm it is around here. And just go stand on an asphalt parking lot and feel how much warmer it is than out in the grassy field. But you have a tree canopy over all of that. you're still able to target water that tree with a drip irrigation system, and then just have a bunch of rocks or mulch or whatever else underneath it with, so xeriscaping isn't no landscaping. It's just
Yeah.
better, water-wise landscaping.
I just don't like trees in the park strip.
Our
I
engineers
don't
would
blame you. I
agree.
agree.
There's more of a headache than I think to
Well,
benefit.
it cracks your sidewalks, it cracks your gutters.
Plus your windows on your snow plows, your street sweepers can't get to the curb, maintenance side of it.
But yeah, it's challenging. Yeah, definitely a cost involved. Okay, let's go back. 1, 2.
So to Brent's point though, if we incentivize trees in a strip,
Okay.
park strip, I wouldn't mind taking that out. And say, look, you want to put a tree there, we agree, put it in your yard. On the park
Hopefully,
strip.
when we're done with this, the whole cluster code goes away and we redo it.
So, but
Oh, I agree with that.
in regards to,
Me too.
trees, so the cluster code will go away. In regards to trees, we do have, I think we do have something in here, encouraging street trees. More for so there is some data that shows that the shade that it provides the street system actually helps the longevity of the street systems because it's not under the beating sun. And I can get you some information on that as well.
I
But
believe it.
at the end of the day, there's value in having not just the shade, not just the protection. It's more about the aesthetic of that street. I took some of the planners out to Quincy Avenue between 36th Street and 30th. And we drove down Quincy and I just found myself not wanting to go more than 25, 26 miles an hour. It's a 35-mile-an-hour road. I just couldn't bring myself to go faster than that. And I couldn't figure out why. I was just driving down that by myself one day. And so I took the planners out there and said, why does it feel like this is just a slow roll road? Now Quincy has a few things going on. It's got a white line on both sides. And so it's got a constrained travel lane. For part of it, that constrained travel lane is only 11 feet wide, not 12 feet wide. So you're just by nature, you're in a tighter space, you're gonna go slower. But we got to a part of Quincy that didn't have the street trees. It just kind of felt like it opened up. And so there's a benefit in your neighborhoods to having that, but should it be in the front yard? And if it should be, the hard part, we need to make sure that they stay in the front yard. So we have a street cross section that we're going to be proposing with this plan that shows trees in the park strip, but it also shows them in a 10-foot public utility / tree easement on the property. And it's going to be incumbent on us. That's an enforcement issue. Most of the time, people know that they can't take the tree out of the park strip because that's a city tree, right? But once it's in your front yard, it's a little harder to remind them that that tree is a required tree.
Upkeep on that tree ends up being an issue. When the tree gets, like these areas that have these sycamores,
Yep.
they're massive trees. And you end up developing a canopy, which is way cool. But when the tree starts falling down,
Yep.
who cleans it up?
Yep.
Well, the property owner's saying, not me, it's not in my area.
I live in a neighborhood with those sycamore trees. My neighbor had a log about this big with the last windstorm over the weekend, and it was 3 inches away from his truck. Didn't hit the truck though. But
Well,
you're right.
that
It's-
ends up being a
it's problematic.
substantial issue.
So that being said, is there code about what kind of tree you can put there?
Yes, so we haven't adopted anything, but there is going to be proposed code for the type of tree because there are specific types of tree that work really well as public street trees. And then other types like sycamores that do not. And so Plain City has actually adopted a street tree regulation. And there are, I think they have a really good guidance in that. And I'd like to see us do something similar to that. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be jurisdictional discretion on whether or not those trees go in. Okay, that was I'm a tree lover, sorry about that.
Hey, Charlie, this is Scott. I'm just listening in. If you'd like an example of a mature neighborhood with the correct species of tree that doesn't break up the sidewalks and the gutters, I can give you an address if you want to go onto Google Earth and take a look at it. It's that cross section we've looked at in the past.
Let's see.
I think BDO, look at Depot Drive.
BBO is a great example.
That's.
I don't know what trees they have in there, nor do I know. Well, they've got them.
They're a
Male
male species locust.
Okay. So Ogden City has a urban forester. I mean, they've got the benefit of having a lot of knowledge and expertise. We had a conversation, planning division, our engineering division, and their urban forester had a good long conversation about best ways to do an urban forest. Again, that urban heat island effect is a huge issue, but I just use this example and forgive me if I offended anyone or step on any toes, but when you're walking in certain areas of Ogden, downtown Ogden, in areas that you otherwise wouldn't want to walk, there's something that gives an advantage to those neighborhoods. If you had 0 trees in those neighborhoods, all you would see is land. But you have trees, you're driving down the road, you just got green canopy, and it just changes the way that feels. It's not until you actually stop and look around that you realize, well, there's a lot of disrepair in this neighborhood.
Right down Main Street, Brigham City. Those
Yeah.
trees have been there for 100 years now. And that's
Those-
what gives it all the character that it has.
Those are the huge ones that
It has
are in my front. I moved into my neighborhood in part because it was tree lined. I mean, you can't see the sun on the pavement at the peak of summertime. And I have spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on tree maintenance. So I recognize that there was a challenge there. All right, Scott, what is the address?
Okay, it's 965 East, 2900 North in North Logan, Utah. So from there, Charlie, go directly south on that road. Go to Street View, and you see how, yep, so that 1000 East, yep, drop them right there.
This
This
is the
neighborhood-
without the grass.
Yep. So this neighborhood developed 15 to 20 years ago. And I know because this is where I grew up. And if you actually go straight north from here, Charlie, just keep on clicking down. This was a phase of the subdivision where they had street trees, and you'll get to a point where it doesn't. You can kind of see the contrast of how not, and this isn't an uppity neighborhood at all. This is just a regular old neighborhood. You
As
kind
we're
of look
driving-
side to side.
we're
It
driving
hides
down
the
this.
blight.
So just a quick comment about the street cross section. I don't know if it's a foot behind sidewalk. In my opinion, those sidewalks are too narrow, but aside from that, this street cross section it's a 12-inch concrete ribbon that holds the asphalt in place so you don't get the breaking at the edge of the asphalt. You've got a rock drainage swell. Everything's sloped down into here, and then it slopes right back up into the yard. And you can see how the driveways get across that drainage swell. And it's designed to pick up the amount of water that's going to flow off of this roadway. And so it doesn't have to be huge and deep drainage swells. I think sometimes our engineers are thinking about the way we're doing. Sorry. Our engineers are thinking about the way we're doing drainage swells and worried that the water table is going to be too high to accommodate for this. Well, in some cases, we might have to line that drainage swell with something hard that channels the water from going somewhere, or perforate a pipe underneath it. But and then here you've got your trees and your rock mulch, as opposed to grass. Which, imagine this road with both sides of it. All right, Scott, how far am I going?
Well, to there, you can see the transition. Now you're back to a
Yep.
curb and gutter. You know, when you flip around, you got a wider road cross section with a narrower park strip.
That's right.
Yep. So Charlie, at that intersection, turn and go west. So turn around.
You're set back closer to the sidewalk and there on the road as well, so that would take, but that comes from the sidewalk eventually.
And they're small enough trees, so at maturity, their root system isn't so much that they heave up the sidewalk. I'm not gonna say they never will.
Surface, well, they might not be surface ones either, but
Right.
it's not like putting a willow there that's gonna cause problems. But that creates so that you don't have your sweepers and everything else having damage.
All right, so Scott, where am I going?
So if you'll notice this this neighborhood you're in now, the park strip is much more narrow, not an opportunity for the trees. You still see trees in front yards, but not in that park strip that lines the trees. So you'll see more, you can actually see more of these homes. This neighborhood developed, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s. Whereas the other neighborhood developed, I think, in about 2003 or so. You kind of see just the difference from a neighborhood. The asphalt's wider. It doesn't have that nice canopy that kind of reaches across the street. It doesn't hide the homes quite as much. It's just a nice, I guess, comparison.
On the turf just seems like a waste.
No.
That's just for a place for the dog to go to the bathroom.
Right.
And then.
That's right.
That's about it.
That's right. No use in having that turf there. Looking at this street, my inclination would be to maybe not mash on the gas pedal, because I could still see that I'm in a residential area, but I'm certainly not gonna be super concerned about how fast I'm going. I
A
could,
17-year-old version would be doing.
I would, yeah, well, actually, I probably did, maybe not this street, but yeah. I got pulled over a few times when I was 17, 45 and a 25, I'm sure. But it's just wide open, and you get this false sense of security on this street that you've got the ability to go a lot faster. It just feels like it's designed for a higher speed, even though one thing it has going for it is they've never painted a yellow line down the middle, which indicates that it's a smaller residential street. So let's just go back here so that Commissioner Jenkins can see what we were looking at. Here's the new.
Let's stop right there.
You could see, let me go back. You can see that transition perfectly.
Yeah, I do see that.
So, and.
But
this-
just prior to this, just before you got to that point. Oh, stop right there. There's a good one. You notice this? Well, you look at the strip there. There's nothing in there.
Yep.
They've got nothing there, and there's nothing here, nothing along there.
Is that a bad thing?
No, I'm all in favor of that, in fact.
So when you were out, we were talking about how, so looking at this area, let's drive forward just a little bit now that we're in this. It's a narrower street. Your desire to just punch that gas pedal is gonna be a
No, I
lot
agree.
different. And then,
I can't argue what you're saying. But you add 20 years to this and look at the broken sidewalks that'll be there for those trees getting larger.
yes,
See look how close those are to there.
This is 20 years.
so these are at 20 years. It was done in 2002. And this image was,
Here's
is,
another 20.
But look, you can already see that sidewalk.
But what's the difference in
It's-
40 years?
We're at-
They've ground that sidewalk right there,
It's
that
actually
joint right behind that tree.
it's
Right there. You
2000.
can,
See where
you
they
see that
ground it.
right there. I can see that now.
Yeah. Good eye.
What are we looking at? I see a
They
shadow.
ground that sidewalk right there.
Because it's lifted from your tree.
I have to go look. It does kind of look like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Not to say that you won't get that. There's certainly a maintenance cost when it comes to street
But
trees.
look at the width of that. That appears to be about a 4 or 5 foot park strip.
But it's a drainage swell as well. It's
Oh,
got
yeah. Like, yeah, I
LID,
see that now.
the new LID requirement.
Well, in fact, yeah, when you look at that, that's not a full curve.
No. it's
No,
just-
that's just, so it's a 12, that's a
For
12
those
inch
other
ribbon.
one you were showing that I said I like that, they were narrow, like 12 or 18 inches.
Yeah, when you're looking at this, Commissioner, you've got less asphalt, so less cost to the developer, which is the good news. We can work with him on other cost things. You got 12 inches of concrete ribbon that actually holds the asphalt in place, so you don't get the edge breakage. And then you've got, let's look at this side. Then you've got a non-turf grass, rock-filled drainage swell
Yeah.
that the water can slowly go through. And you
I
know,
like all of that.
I'm
I'm
glad-
very happy with that. I like the rolled edge, rolled gutters instead of the curb. I like rock. I'm amenable to all that.
So this is the cross section that we are proposing, the residential cross section. We're still calling it a rural street cross section. We're
Mhm.
trying to pay tribute to the rural roots of the community, even though it's still gotta manage the amount of drain water flows that.
So you're not talking about putting any drainage system in there?
In some areas,
Storm drain?
in some areas, we will have to have drainage systems. In some areas, you're just not getting enough, you're not gonna get enough percolation in these swells. And so some of these swells, we might have to hard surface line them, so it transfers water better. Some of them, we might have a perforated pipe that's buried underneath it to collect all that water, that then goes to collection boxes and then gets pushed out somewhere else. So it just depends on groundwater, really, and how high that is.
So there's a grate on this road though, so that this water does run in the direction, right? I'm
Yes.
Presuming.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
that-
say, we've got ditches all through western part of the county, and if it's like Plain City, they end up being your storm drains.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. They're land drains today and they end up being storm drains, and the way Gary's been designing them, and they work very well. They put lots of rock and fiber around it, and it still is a land drain, but it's storm drains very well.
And those likely won't go away. Some of
Great.
them might be moved, some of them.
Okay,
might
I
be
have no
buried.
problem with that.
Okay.
We agree. I'm with you here.
Cool. Okay, so that was a good conversation about road water. Little diatribe, but this is good because this is all part of the plan. So let's look at page 70. Let's see. Turn to page 78. So, and this is for the commissioners to know. We talked to the county commission a little bit, or the planning commission about this last week. Looking at the bottom of the page, methods of reducing water demand and consumption. So all of this water concurrency, everything we talk about water over the next conversation, is being mandated by the state. They've got a very specific and detailed amount of information that we're supposed to consider in our general plan. So here we are considering it. One of those is methods of reducing water demand and consumption. Okay, so I read the state water plan, and one of the goals of the state is to reduce water use per capita in the Weber River Basin by 20% by 2030. So as the population grows, we're still going to be using more water, but it's going to be less per person by 20%. They further want to reduce that by the year 2065 by another 30, or sorry, to a total of 30% reduction per person. So finding the way, so the state code says that we need to work towards goals that help the state achieve this reduction in water. Okay, next page, 79. I just put in there a graph on how Utah uses its water. Public supply is, that's going to be your drinking water, and I think you're going to find your secondary water in your public supply as well, which is 15% of water use. The state wants us to look at ways to reduce water waste in future development, but also look at ways that we can reduce water waste in existing development. So future development, I see a lot of opportunities. So I have a very fleshed out set of paragraphs under existing development. I see a lot of the same opportunities just going straight into future development. It's just we don't have to retrofit anything. Okay. So the only other things that I want to address in future development is creating an ordinance that prohibits turf grass within public right of way. Now, my question for you guys is that too much? Is prohibition too much of a stance, or are we comfortable with that idea? It's the county's right of way, even though we do require the adjacent landowner to maintain the landscaping that's in that. Are we okay to say don't put turf grass there?
I don't like prohibit, especially after looking at this. A mix. I mean, I think let it be the choice, strongly encourage, but this looks nice. You have some with grass, you got some with mulch, some with rock. It's a diversity that I think. I like the way that looks. So,
okay.
I was strongly in the favor of how we put that last time, but seeing this,
Not as much of a concern because so the aesthetic of the neighborhood kind of outweighs the benefit that we get. It's really not a ton of area that we're getting rid of.
now if you get into and you do
Compared to
like the
somebody's
stuff
front yard.
we've seen on the other side of the street with that little teeny narrow thing, then like you say, the grass does nothing. But this, I mean, you got 5 or 6 feet there. It
Okay.
looks nice.
So maybe we'll see some master plan communities that get maybe a modest increase. And then those ones, there'll be an agreement that says, all right, we'll rock mulch.
I agree.
all these.
I
But
think-
just as a standard, anybody else without a CCNR like that.
Which
maybe
goes back to just like what we were talking earlier, through that master plan agreement, certain zones or certain housing clusters, I guess, as you would say in there,
Mhm.
is where you would put those in.
Okay,
I
so instead of prohibit, strongly encourage is going to be another one. Strongly encourage. Our good news is we don't have any ordinances that require a certain amount of turf grass. In fact, even in our commercial areas, we say no more than 50% of your area can be turf grass. Now, maybe we should even decrease that more so. So strongly
That's still
encourage.
10%.
So in this whole thing, this is gonna be a substantial change from where we've been as a highly rural farm area. Okay, I just want to make sure you understand where you're headed.
Well, if it's being developed into something like this, then
Mhm.
that is a substantial change itself.
It is.
Well, you know, the way that I look at this is that this general plan is gonna represent what it looks like in 10 years. And if you would go back say certain parts of Syracuse 10 years ago, it'd be a little bit like Western Weaver County. So as we do this plan, the way that I'm looking at it is we're basically in a transition away from, I'll say, agriculture's going to get smaller. And I think that the demand for homes with the costs and the people that's going to come here, it's going to be almost mandated to make smaller lots and different kind of housing. And so I'm not, I just think that it's part of the transition, and how we get that is through this general plan. So, so that's the way I look at it is what does my eye see in 10 or 15 years or more? And it's not going to be anything like it is today.
I just had, I just bought a home in St. George. And when I pull in my driveway to go in the garage, if the garage door isn't open, I can't get all of my car out of the street onto it if my driveway is so short.
Yeah, I had the same issue. I had a Suburban that when you had the hitch on it, I couldn't even fit it in the garage because the garage is only 20 feet.
Right. And then, the back, here's there is my backyard. I mean, it's very small. And you know what? I'm pretty happy with it.
You're okay with that?
Yeah,
But you wouldn't have bought it.
Time on
if
the
you
golf
weren't.
course, right?
yeah. But I'm an old guy and I don't want to do yard work anymore. And so it depends what kind of person you are and what kind of a yard you want.
Where you are in your life stage and what
Right,
generation.
right.
And I think it's not even life stage. Like Harvey was saying, the next generation, they want something small, someplace to store a kayak and a mountain bike, and that's about it.
Yeah.
They don't want to take care of a yard either, and it's probably pretty smart.
And
Well,
that is
so-
substantially true. The only adjustment I would make to that is as what used to be 20 somethings wanting something small became 30 somethings, they're looking a little bit bigger, but
For
it's
family,
still
maybe,
not,
for their kids to run around.
it's still not big.
My deal here is where we get to, is there are people, I think, I'll just speak to myself. I grew up in kind of the community I'm in now, where I like where I live. I remember the house I lived in, and then we bought a little bigger house in the same community, bought a little bigger house. Next house not gonna be so big. We've got a downside, but I want to leave my community.
You want to be able to find.
I
that
want to be
place
able
that-
to still, if I grew up in Plain City, like those senior houses are by the square.
Yeah.
I mean, just give a variety of different things for people. I don't want to force somebody out of a community because the housing type doesn't exist there. On the flip side of that too, I don't want to force my kids out of my community. This is just me speaking, because they can't afford this kind of a house. I'd like to see options available to them 10, 15 blocks away or 2 blocks away, whatever that ends up being. How, but give them options.
To that effect, one of the strategies we have in the moderate income housing section of the plan is to allow, when it comes to moderate income housing or even lower price point housing, to allow a small portion of what their overall density is to occur on even smaller lot sizes. So when you've got a neighborhood, let's just say you've got 20 homes on 30-acre lots, and you've got one of those homes on an 8-acre lot. As long as you've got everything set back the same distance, you're really not going to notice that home. And your neighborhood value doesn't go down because the comparables that an appraiser is going to look at is at the other homes that are on the same size lot with the same number of bedrooms. They're not going to go to that 3 or 4 bedroom home or 2 or 3 bedroom home on the smaller lot and run that as a comparable. So when people say, I don't want high density housing in my neighborhood, it doesn't have to be high density. It could be 1 or 2 spots that provide that affordability for other kids, children, or even the aging population to eventually move into, and with less grass to mow. And it spreads that housing concern throughout the community, so you're not getting those projects created. Okay, anyway, that's the housing section.
One thing that I'm wondering in here, if we have something that's going back to the xeriscaping
Mhm.
aspect of it,
Mhm.
do we have anything that talks about education? I noticed one thing that we put in some of the community plans in Ogden City is going to the elementary schools and educate the kids on
xeriscaping and the importance of those type of things so that they can take that home to their parents and, educate them. Even, the demographics are different out in West Ogden, or in our area, but in West Ogden, you have more of a Latino and that type of population. So some of the ways to reach the parents is through the kids.
You kind of get that actually through the Stormwater Coalition now, through the water fair, as they go in and teach about the water cycle, they actually do. The health department does one and Ogden City actually does one that kind of talks through that. I mean, you're targeting fifth graders and it's not all the schools, but you do get some of that now from what the coalition does.
And maybe it's something in there to support the coalition and, what we can do.
And maybe there should be something at the level for developers. I know that to get that incentive from Weber Basin, from what I understand about that program, you have to do it online or go to a designated area and go through some, probably 20 or 30-minute program. But maybe at a higher level for developers that come in and are looking to maybe traditionally landscape, but maybe say, hey, this contact at Utah State or something, some educational program might kind of get them thinking in a different direction as far as the landscaping goes as well.
I think a lot of the challenge we have in any kind of municipal government, including county government, is you don't have an educated population that understands how government works. You flush the toilet, your poop disappears. That's a magic toilet. We don't know anything else about it. And I would love to see any kind of educational system getting to the kids early, so they understand that there's a lot more to this, and we need people to be on the public service side. Okay, that brings me, though, the education side of it brings me to the next point under future development water reduction. And that is, and I'm using the word required here, so you guys tell me how you feel about this. Require water-wise signage in all public restrooms that remind the public to be water conscientious and that encourage use of water only for what is necessary. Now, if you go to some states, you rent a hotel, there's a big sign right on the bottom of the mirror, right next to the faucet, that says, "We're in a desert. Don't leave the water on." Or, it's a kind way of saying that, but it's just a sign. It's the same kind of sign that the health department requires employees must wash their hands. Well, right next to it is, "We're in a desert. Please be conscientious and don't leave the water on." Sort of thing.
Don't ask for new towels. Like all that
Sure,
stuff.
yeah. Hang your towels up and reuse them if you can.
So you don't want that in a residential home,
No,
Yeah.
public restrooms.
public rest.
So basically, in order to, I don't know how we would execute this. I don't know if it'd be our inspectors that would do this at final, or if it would be the health department that would do this. But just putting the idea out there that we should look into this is, I think, as far as the plan should go.
I think we encourage it.
We'll think about it later. Sure.
I think if it's a public place and you just encourage it, are they gonna actually do it? If that's something you really want.
Well, the plan says encouraged, but the law changes to say do it. So that's when your rubber hits the road.
Well, I think it gives, if you state encourage in the plan, it gives you guidance to kind of enforce it in your code. That's where it's gotta be.
How about instead of
Well, it
requiring-
did change this year in the legislature. Water gallons in your faucets you're getting are going down now. So right away, you're not gonna get a 2.5 gallon faucet anymore. You're gonna get a 2 gallon. You're not getting a 2.5 gallon shower head. It's gonna go to 1.5 gallons, I think.
We're all gonna have the Jerry Seinfeld hair.
Not all of us.
The low-
Well,
Careful, my mistake, I'm sorry.
There's a few of you in here that will have a problem.
It kind of just
You
runs
still want good
past.
water pressure though, don't you, Andrew?
Okay,
But there's nothing to hold it up.
how does the state enforce that? Is it through building inspections that they're looking at water faucets, or
No.
is it
it's,
that you can't buy it?
Through what
you can
they
sell, isn't it?
allow you to purchase and sell.
So it's a regulation on the retail market.
Mhm.
Interesting. So if I bought something out of state, I might be able to go
Then you can
around that.
bring it in.
You gotta get the Russians.
Or when you buy it, you take it off and take the little rubber grommet out and screw it back together.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
that's what happens. But the reality of it is, it's what they allow us to sell.
Okay.
And then they did the same thing with water heaters a couple years ago, changed to the low NOx water heaters.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, turf grass reduction. This is gonna be a big one, and we've only got 8 minutes to go. So I've got a few strategies in here.
Where you at now?
So I'm on 79, page 79. It's under turf grass reduction. And ultimately, sorry, it's under the main header of water reduction in existing development. So these are strategies. Really what we're talking about are the facts. This is what exists today. We'll create the goals and objectives out of what exists today. So let's just look under water reduction in existing development. It says achieving water reduction goals will require modification to existing and historic development practices. So starting out with turf grass, Weaver Basin Conservancy District estimates the typical yard of single-family residence within its service area provides 8,000 square feet of turf grass or similar water-intensive ground cover. This amount of turf grass and similar water-intensive ground cover requires approximately 10% more water than a typical single-family residence. Typical single-family residence, 0.45 acre feet. Typical 8,000 square foot and water-intensive turf grass is 0.55 acre feet for a total of 1.0 acre feet. In the West Central area, the minimum lot area is predominantly 40,000 square feet. Assuming the lot owner covers 20,000 to 30,000 square feet of the lot in turf grass, the yard will demand between 50 and 64% more water than the typical indoor residential use. So we've got life-sustaining and life-supporting water coming into our homes, and then we've got water that we're putting on vegetation outside, and we're using significantly more outside. Okay. Replacement of existing turf grass with water-wise landscaping and irrigation practices can significantly reduce this water demand. For example, drought-tolerant plant species that are watered with targeted low-water irrigation, such as drip or trickle irrigation, and that are surrounded with rock, wood, or similar mulch can significantly reduce outdoor water demands while continuing to provide an aesthetically pleasing landscape. There is a 40 to 90% water savings when switching from pressurized sprinkle irrigation to low-pressure drip or trickle irrigation. And I've got sources that I've cited in that. 40 to 90, I mean, it's depending on how many emitters you have and what kind of landscaping you're actually planting.
Charlie, with that savings, do you still get the same effect?
You don't,
Like, is it gonna make it so your shrubs and everything still get the same?
Yes.
water?
in fact, because it's targeted, you have an ability to adjust exactly how much water each of the shrubs get. So you got a larger shrub that you planted, you know, it needs a little bit more water, you get a drip emitter that.
So that kind of goes back to Rick's point about education, right?
Yep.
Getting people to go.
Exactly. And that's part of the general plan. This is just existing circumstances, helps provide some of that education, but yeah, educating the public. I'll make sure that gets in there. Next paragraph down, reducing lot area requirements. So going back to what Commissioner Jenkins said a little bit ago, reducing lot area requirements and setback requirements will reduce ground area to be covered, and therefore will also help reduce an owner's desire for the more water intensive ground cover. Ultimately, what the state wants to see is a reduction in a gallons per capita per day metric. That's how they're measuring. And it's not hard to measure for indoor use, because we're talking about 250 gallons per day in a home, divided by the average household size of Western Weaver, which is about 2.7, 2.8 people. You can divide that and find exactly what your gallons per capita per day is in that respect. Add in your secondary water uses outside, and you can see your gallons per capita per day for secondary water. Weaver Basin and the state both told me that that is how, that's the national standard to determine how water efficient or water effective an area is. Okay. Next paragraph just talks about different water providers in the state providing turf buyback programs, and then encouraging that to happen. Okay, the county should also amend its street right-of-way standards to, I'm taking away prohibit, strongly encourage, encourage turf grass within the public right-of-way. County should amend its street right-of-way standards to strongly encourage reduction of.
4 minutes, Charlie.
Thanks. Okay. Ag water reduction. I know that we had some discussions in a few previous planning commissions that were a little bit hesitant to talk about ag water. You're not gonna find anything that's mandated on ag water here. Everything is encouraging. And all the research that I found so far, with a couple of exceptions, will support the economics behind converting to drip irrigation, even if it's tossing the system at the end of the year and putting out new tubing. So I read a few empirical articles as well as anecdotal information. But
On
so
certain crops.
that's right, and that's
Crop
we
specific.
Yep, it is crop specific, and one of the hazards of drip irrigation or triple irrigation, if you're not doing it right and you're not providing appropriate water management, is waterlogged roots, because you're putting too much on it, even though you're saving a lot of water, putting too much on your crops. But they have found, there are studies that have found a 90% increase in crop production with drip irrigation as opposed to overhead irrigation. That brings its own set of problems. 90% increase in production. Well, now you're sucking a lot of nutrients out of the ground, and now you're tilling the ground a lot more. And now you have to rotate your crop a lot more. And so there's a lot more intensive effect that could come out of drip irrigation just by sheer factor of increasing the yield. Okay, so water reduction, 3 minutes. Typical flood irrigation wastes approximately 50% of the water applied through evaporation or percolation. Water wasted through percolation is water that seeps into the earth without positively moistening the root system of the crop. Similarly, typical spray irrigation wastes approximately 35% of the water applied. Now, let's not just talk about a ditch. Let's talk about flood irrigation going down the center of your crops. 50% of that, some of it evaporated, the other goes straight down without ever affecting the root system of that crop that's there. Okay, so drip and trickle irrigation. In many agricultural circumstances, low pressure drip or trickle irrigation can lead to increased crop production while increasing the efficiency of water use. It could more efficiently target a plant's roots, thereby avoiding much of the waste resulting from flood and spray irrigation. It can also be used to provide more targeted method of fertilizer delivery. However, so straight to your concern, Bren, however, while more efficient in certain circumstances, drip or trickle irrigation has limitations that may offset the overall balance of sustainable agriculture. And so maybe it's not just about preserving water, if you have other bigger impacts on the land. The lifespan of drip and trickle irrigation tubing and emitters is relatively short and requires regular replacement, sometimes annually. Hard water clogs tubing and emitters, and requires regular cleaning or replacement of emitters or installation of water softening systems, which is expensive when you're talking about an entire farm. An agricultural operator must weigh the water efficiency benefits with the overall agricultural productivity. Ditches and canals.
Hold on,
Sorry.
I don't know too much about this stuff you just going on. I'm trying to learn.
Mhm.
But the less water you put on the ground, which is great, you're using less water. Isn't that gonna affect the underground aquifers?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that will as well.
And the lake.
What's the positive or negative effect to that?
So what the state is hoping happens is as you're pulling less water out of the rivers to irrigate your crop, that water gets to go further down and fill the lake. Now, your aquifers will definitely be impacted when, for example, East Huntsville has an irrigation system. It was all ditch delivery system. They pressurized. When they pressurized their system, a sealed system, the ditches stopped percolating. That water wasted out of those ditches stopped flowing into the groundwater, which stopped flowing into the river. And now a portion of South Fork is dry, a portion of the year. Whereas before, there's always been a historic flow. So yes, that concern is there. Doesn't mean that there's less water in the aquifer though, because they're putting less.
Does it mean that there's less, does it mean there's more too?
It just means it's been moved. Yeah.
Gotta weigh that, sleep on that a little more.
Well, look, in general, you're trying to encourage this, and this is a good statement. I don't have a problem with that. In general.
Right now, just adding facts.
That's right.
As we look at goals and objectives, what do we say about this? I'm still not sure. And I'm gonna come to you guys in another meeting to discuss what are the goals and objectives for agriculture. Honestly, I think at the end run, it's going to be provide education and encouragement. And that's probably about all we can do. You guys need to go overtime.
Yeah, but gives us something to talk about, underground water.
It does.
You know, you store your water underground and you don't have evaporation.
Yep.
And Weaver Basin's doing it now. The
Yep.
South Weaver's a good, South Weaver pits, or that area is a great example of
The
that.
next section down talks about ditches and canals being underground, and so water storage maybe as well. The next storage, the next section after that.
This is the next meeting.
Yeah. I'm gonna let you go over that in your own time. It's specifically about county operations. So the state requires us to look at how we operate. There's not a whole lot of water we use as a county because we just don't have those big water consuming functions.
So
But,
tell me, what's your plans here, Charlie, for the next meetings, and when is this thing gonna roll out, we can vote on?
So I think that we'll have, the next meeting we have with Western Weaver right now is scheduled to be, scheduled to be a public hearing. And that's their meeting in July.
In July?
Yes.
July what?
12th? Yep.
11th.
12th,
Which is it?
right, July 12th.
And you think you're ready to go to the public now?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, this is all public facing now. Anyone could get into this document.
Sure.
and Give us
I
comments.
just wanna make sure.
Well, these are the only people that ever show up.
I know.
No, but I wanted, we
It's
talked
not
about,
anxious.
we talked about this today, though, on that website you've got there, I want to make it really easy for people to be able to say, next meeting, or come to the meeting, or join us online, or come here, and
Is it not-
what's her name? Lindsay will be in touch with you.
Yeah.
And through Quinn and the IT. I want to make it really easy for people to
We got a
save
couple
comments,
suggestions.
because I don't want anybody to come and say, well, we never had a chance to do
Lindsay's
this.
gonna come.
We put it right on the front page, put it in your face and just say, this is a chance for you to.
Have you been to the website?
Yeah, we were today.
Today.
And if it wasn't up to snuff?
It was pretty good, but when you
Make
get
it
on
more in your
there,
face.
when somebody wants to get a building permit,
Somebody like me.
never
down there can see
everywhere
it.
do you say building permit.
Really?
And that's in layman's term what they
Well,
want.
you're talking about the county's website. You're not
Yeah.
talking about the website they created.
Yeah.
for-
No, I'm talking about the counties, and it can just be a hyperlink over to yours.
Oh.
Doesn't
Okay.
matter, but it's gotta get fixed.
So it's not this one?
No,
No.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So we come up with a few suggestions.
Yeah, it's run by.
Thank you,
the folks that
all of you.
Thanks, Harvey. Good to see you.
I just wanted to share if there's
We
This is my
appreciate
way
your
to try to
time,
get
guys.
everybody out.
Well, you
so
know.
you guys can-
Appreciate it.
In my experience, I haven't
See
seen
ya.
that they're very,
Yeah.
Charlie, is that here downstairs?
the public hearing. Mhm. Yeah, and stay tuned, keep your eye on this, and we'll be posting banners as well. There's a possibility, we'll know over the next week or two whether or not that's gotta be postponed. But I think we have enough of the document right now, a little bit more additions in the utility section to say that we've got best draft going forward. And then get some public comments before we get in and make any more detailed modifications. And I'll have those updated maps as well. You guys want to end, or do you want to go to?
I'm out.
8:30? Well, I think that ends that means we don't have a quorum anymore.
all right. Folks in the room, if you'll all exit down this way, and then you'll walk the long hallway, when you get to a door, well, you can't go through that, it's locked, then hit another long hallway.
One of the doors will let you out.
The one at the end of the long hallway.
He did, but he said he'd get back with me because I wanted to cut that grass.